Okay, good morning, everyone. We're going to get started. Our fifth panelist, Tiffany Jiron, is on her way. I think she's looking for parking right now. So I talked to her. She said, go ahead and get started without her, and she'll just jump right in. Thank you for attending today's Indigenous Women Directors panel. My name is Tatiana Lamatwa-Singer. I'm Hopi and Choctaw, and I'm the Curator of Collections at the IAIA Museum of Contemporary Native Arts. I co-curated the Our Stories exhibition with the 5 panelists who are here today, and I will be moderating today's discussion. I would first like to address that the IAIA Museum of Contemporary Native Arts, it respectfully acknowledges that it is located on the traditional Puebloan lands of the Tanoan and Caren-speaking peoples, and we honor and thank them for their graciousness and stewards of this land. Before we start the discussion, I'm going to give you a brief background about the jewelry exhibitions on display here at MoCNA that led up to this panel talk, and we'll follow with short bios on each of our distinguished guests. I'll then lead us into a discussion with some prompt questions, and we'll leave some time before the end of the hour for questions from the audience. First, I'd like to start with the Stories We Carry exhibition located on the second floor of our museum. The Stories We Carry exhibit features contemporary jewelry created by more than 100 Indigenous artists from across decades, stewarded by the IAIA Museum of Contemporary Native Arts permanent collection. It was guest curated by IAIA Assistant Professor Brian Fleetwood, Muskogee Creek, graduate of IAIA in 2012. And the exhibition explores the extraordinarily diverse recent history of Indigenous jewelry and its enduring relationship with IAIA. Many of the works were made by IAIA students, faculty, alumni, and artists in residence, presenting another side to the IAIA's rich history. The Our Stories exhibition, located on the second floor hallway, is a companion to the Stories We Carry. For this project, we wanted to give community members and artists the opportunity to tell their own stories through items from their own personal jewelry collections. So essentially, they were the curators of their own panels. Each person was asked to contribute work to be included in a small wall case. The objects presented carry stories, meaning, and identity, or are simply a source of joy. Everyone approached the project in unique ways, selecting mementos of community, family, and travels, items that mark significant moments of their lives, and objects that represent a great love of art and/or deep ties to the art world. Our Stories further examines the idea that jewelry is a practice of wearing artwork and adornment to reify our identities and remind us of who we are. The objects we personally wear, collect, or make for ourselves communicate to the world around us a sense of the places we have been, the things we love, and the people who make up our stories. Currently on view are 5 Indigenous women directors who have shared with us jewelry and adornment from their personal collections. These include Patsy Phillips in the middle, Caren Gala, here right next to me, Tiffany Jiron, yay, you made it, Mary Deleary, and Danielle Means. Okay. So I'm going to read their bios, just to give you some background about each. Patsy Phillips, an enrolled citizen of the Cherokee Nation of Oklahoma, is in her 17th, 18th year as the museum director of the IAIA Museum of Contemporary Native Arts, MoCNA. Phillips has collaborated for over 30 years with artists, educators, scholars, and administrators who advocate for the understanding and advancement of contemporary Indigenous arts and cultures. Before joining MoCNA, Phillips participated in the planning and opening of the Smithsonian's National Museum of the American Indian, Washington, D.C. Phillips is a member for both the Board of Directors of the International Council of Museums for the United States, ICOM US, and the American Alliance of Museums. Recognized internationally for her accomplishments in the museum field, Phillips is also known for her distinctive style, including her jewelry. The pieces she selected speak to her extensive career of supporting Indigenous artists and their work, highlighting Phillips' personal and professional story of advocacy and collaboration. Dr. Mary Deleary, Anishinaabe from Deshken Zimlin, I'm so sorry for messing that up, Chippewas of the Thames First Nation, is the director of the Research Center for Contemporary Native Arts at the Institute of American Indian Arts in Santa Fe. Before joining the IAIA, she was a Mellon Impact postdoctoral fellow in Native American Studies at the University of Oklahoma. During that time, she developed her research profile, supported NAS Mellon Impact undergrad fellows, and taught courses on Indigenous leadership and Native American women. An IAIA alumna with a BFA in Museum Studies, Dr. Deleary attended the Institute of American Indian Arts from 2005 to 2010. Afterwards, she earned her MA in Tribal Governance from the University of Minnesota Duluth and a PhD in Native American Art History from the University of Oklahoma. Her research focuses on the Anishinaabe practices of making and recovering Get Anishinaabe, the old ones. Deeply connected to her home community, Dr. Deleary serves as an elected member of the Deshkan Zibing, I cannot pronounce this at all, Kinamangjing Board of Education. Okay. Through her dedication to Native arts and governance, she continues to empower Native nations and honor Anishinaabe, Adzwin, the Anishinaabe ways of life. Caren Gala. Caren Gala, Laguna, Taos, Nambé, Pueblos, is the director of the Santa Fe Indigenous Center. Her goals in this position are to provide support, create opportunity, and make change for the Native community of the Santa Fe County who are struggling and require assistance. For Gala, SFIC is, quote, a valuable resource that is diligently working to make a difference in the lives of those who require special services. Gala studied business and social services at Haskell Indians Nation University in Lawrence, Kansas. And then upon returning to New Mexico, she began raising a family and has worked in the nonprofit sector for over 28 years, including the Southwestern Association for Indian Arts, SWAIA, and other nonprofits that serve Native people. In the early 90s, Gala learned to make jewelry at the Post Center at Pewaukee, Pueblo in order to make ends meet while she was raising her two daughters. Although much of what she made was sold, she held on some pieces and inherited what she made for her mother that have now become legacy pieces for her and her daughters. Tiffany Jiron, Isleta Pueblo, is the executive director of the Coalition to Stop Violence Against Native Women, based in Albuquerque, New Mexico. CSVANW is dedicated to addressing violence against Native women and children and amplifying their voices and stories to promote healing for survivors and tribal communities. Jiron holds master's degrees in social work and public administration. Her life's work has been a journey in advocacy that started with her job as the supervised visitation assistant in 2014 at Isleta Social Services, and later as the supervised visitation coordinator. Jiron currently sits on the National Center on Domestic Violence, Trauma, and Mental Health Advisory Board. She served as the New Mexico Highlands University Legislative Leadership Fellow during the 2023 New Mexico Legislative Session and successfully advocated to expand and enhance mental health services for students and faculty. Jiron is a dedicated mother to 3 young children. Growing up, her grandmother supported and raised her since her birth, and she has had the greatest influence on her life. The selection of jewelry that Jiron curated were gifts to her by her family and friends, and in her words, I have been given jewelry that is indigenous me. Last but not least is Danielle Means, Oglala Lakota, who's the executive director of the Museum of Indian Arts and Culture, MAIAC, here in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Means has a long, successful career in philanthropy and leadership in the nonprofit sector. She served as the development director for the Southwestern Association for Indian Arts Incorporated and was the first Indigenous executive director of Santa Fe Center for Contemporary Arts. In addition, Means was director of advancement at the Institute of American Indian Arts and worked in leadership positions at the Smithsonian's National Museum of the American Indian. She holds board memberships with the Joan Mitchell Foundation and 516 Arts and serves as an advisory board member for the Queensboro Community College of the City University of New York Art Gallery and Museum Studies program. Raised on the Rosebud Reservation in South Dakota, Means strives to bring Indigenous values to larger communities. Her jewelry reflects Means' give it your all. That's her quote, passion for greatness while realizing the importance of family and identity. So during the process of meeting with each individual, when we were receiving their jewelry and capturing the stories for each piece, a number of common themes emerged. I'm going to read some of them. Family, community, accomplishments, relationships, supporting artists and community, travels, and practitioner. So I wanted to dig a little deeper on some of those concepts with all of them together today. So I have 2 general questions for the group and 3 selected questions for individuals. However, if any of you would like to add a response to any of the questions, please do. So first, in the exhibition, each of the panelists included 1 or more pieces of jewelry within their personal collections that were tied to family. And I'm thinking of the stories that Caren shared about her mother's jewelry, Danielle Means's mother and divorce rings, Tiffany's grandmother's jewelry, Mary's mother pin design, and Patsy's Henry Phillips cuff. So I'm going to start with a question on family. This question is for all of the panelists, and we'll just start left to right if you guys don't mind. Could each of you briefly speak to how family and your upbringing has impacted what you do and who you are today? Yes.
Hello, everybody. So part of my collection includes a lot of jewelry that I made, and of course, growing up in the Pueblo, still living in the Pueblo, a lot of it you'll see our Pueblo influence. You know, I have like rings with tablitas, you know, in a woman's face. I have a lot of jewelry that was gifted to me after my mother passed away in 2019. She was a very, strong influence in my life. Even though she never like held a job, she was a homemaker. And so everything she did, everything she was, has touched my life. So the jewelry that I made was something that I did while my kids were growing up. You know, I took classes at the Post Center, and I learned from Michael Garcia. A lot of it is inlay, lapidary work. And to this day, I haven't seen anything like the rings. I really want you guys to see that because they're a unique part of my collection. So can I tell them about the, what's her name? Sorry, my mind went blank.
Let's wait for that one. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think back on a family story that gets circulated every time we gather. Growing up on Chippewas, the Thames First Nation in southwestern Ontario, Canada, my grandparents had a store. So it was like a convenience store. And we, sold a variety of things at a convenience store and gas. And that was like my first job. So I was out there pumping gas, to patrons, or me and my sisters used to love working the till and, ringing things up, and we would practice on each other. But the story is when I was about 2 or 3, I believe, and my mother left me with my Aunt Paula and my grandmother, and they went to have a nap, and they lived in a house right next to the store. Somehow I got out of the house, I made my way to the store, I opened the store up, and I sat behind the counter, and I had my hand out waiting for people to come in. And there's an elder woman in our community, her name is also Mary McGackey, and she was like, she came in, buy a paper or a pack of cigarettes, and she's like, where's your family? Where is everybody? And I'm just sitting there with my hand out. So I that's kind of maybe representative of a lot of things really, but always kind of maybe welcoming, getting out there and being a go-getter. I don't know. But I think about how that place and that space kind of really shaped me and who I am, from my grandparents to my aunts, my cousins. I think about my mother and the pin that I put in my case, and her journey to, bring us to Santa Fe, to learn about the arts of Anishinaabe, to learn about the arts of our community, and how that trickled down to her kids and her grandkids. Miigwech.
Thank you, Tatiana, for organizing this panel. And I know Mary and Danielle well, and it's nice to get to know the other two ladies. Yeah, that's kind of a big question for me. So I have 13 aunts and uncles on my mother's side, who's the Cherokee, and I have 9 aunts and uncles on my dad's side. And only one uncle on my mother's side graduated high school. So education, there was no emphasis on education. And they lived on the Cherokee Nation. And growing up, I always thought he had a college degree. And only a few years ago when he came here to visit me did I learn he didn't have a college degree. And a high school education was so important to the family, but none of them finished. And so we always thought he was the educated one, which he was. Really, I always thought he was college educated. So anyway, there wasn't an emphasis on education. My father was illiterate, and until he died, he could only sign his name. And my mother went to the 8th grade. And so when I started going to college, I went to 3 private universities and graduated from all 3. My family's like, "Who are you? What are you doing?" And they've kind of come to accept me now, but you know what? The other thing is, I love my family. I don't care if they're educated or not, but so I think that had a big influence on me. We had no education in our family, and when I was a young woman, I was dating an attorney and then a doctor, and I thought, I'm as smart as those guys. And so anyway, I pursued it, and I'm here. So the cuff I have upstairs, I never had children. And when I was in Washington, D.C., I adopted Henry. His name's Henry, but I named him Henry Phillips. And he was a rescue, so he's not a pedigree. And I mean, I love that dog. Oh my God. I never have loved anything like I love that dog. Really, still. Sorry, James. Still. I mean, not my parents. Anyway, I love that dog. And he lived till he was 16. And he was a 100-pound dog. And he was, I guess, what they call soulmate or something. But anyway, so after he passed, I just thought about, let me James commissioned Marcus Ammerman, who's your cousin, to create a cuff. And so I gave him a picture. And I'm just going to tell one other short story because it's really cute. We had a big donor in town. She's now passed. But she would invite me and Henry to the Bark and Ball, which is a big fundraiser for the animal shelter. And she would always buy Henry a ticket, and he would sit at the table, and he always wore a wig. And he was like a rock star at this gala. He would go every year, and people would take his picture, and he'd sit at the table, and then everybody would give him their salmon or whatever, and he'd just eat it off the plate. And then I'd give him a wine glass, and he'd drink out of the wine glass. And he stayed there. He was actually food driven. Kind of like me, but he was food driven, and so James commissioned Marcus to make that cuff from that photo from the Bark and Ball.
That's hard to. I mean, that's a hard one. Well, I guess I'll talk because everyone kind of snickered when they heard the divorce ring, and I do call it the divorce ring because actually Carrie Atumby called it the divorce ring. When I had asked her, I moved here after my divorce and really wanted to do something with my wedding band and wedding ring, and asked Carrie Atumby to reconfigure the stones. And I told her, yes, this is about my divorce, but there's 3 really amazing young men who came out of that relationship, and so I want to really highlight them. And so we talked just a little bit. She said, what are you looking to do with this ring? And I said, well, I want to represent my boys because my boys are my everything. And so she took the large stone and she put two diamonds on either side and 2 rings that stack together to make a cluster of these 3s. So my 3 boys are represented in these clusters of 3 diamonds. And it put the whole wedding ring and wedding band back into perspective for me, and I miss it terribly. I just have to tell you that. I miss it so much. But then she also made for me a mother's ring. And the mother's ring, she took the birthstone of each boy. And I have 2 who were born in February. And so I said, they're very different young men. Could you do different types of stones, different types of amethyst for them? And so she did one rounded amethyst and then one very square amethyst. And then my 3rd son is born in October, so there's an opal. And with each is a tiny little diamond. I happen to be an April baby, so diamond is my birthstone. So those all 3 stack up in different configurations, and they all, each individually, have me and them together. It was just, I didn't explain this to Carrie. Carrie came up with this. And so to have a piece, to have an artist, Caren, you talking about your references to your mother's work. To have an artist be able to take what you say and do it so elegantly and beautifully, that's what is just so meaningful to me.
Thank you. Hinimem Kima Haramba. Good afternoon, everyone. I made it. And parking wasn't that bad. I actually found something super fast and close. So I was like, okay, cool. It's meant to be. Well, I did bring my 2 daughters here with me, and I'm going to be sharing a lot of things about our family and why I do the work I do, and the jewelry that I selected and the woman that I am today is really because of my grandmother. I was born and raised in Isleta, Pueblo, still live there, still live on my grandmother's land. Very fortunate that I was her baby and I inherited everything. Her land, her jewelry, her whatever she had. She had a lot of beautiful things, and she really was a woman who kept us together. She was the strong matriarch of the family, and so when we lost her, we really lose our way a little bit. And I kind of find myself bringing that back with cooking, or whenever we are busy in my Pueblo, I'm usually the one making sure that we're going to have food, or if we're going to have bread, or just getting the things together, because that's what she taught me. And whenever we were, having ceremonies or just feast days, or if she was going out for a graduation fiesta, she always wore these really pretty jewelries, and that's what I selected. When she married my grandfather many years ago, she wore her entire manta and everything, and she just looked so beautiful. I still have her wedding pictures. And she wore these beautiful manta pins that I selected for my piece. And I just really fell in love with, everything that she had, and it felt very, I think I felt, in a way, worried about holding on to all of those things by myself, because I do have 5 other cousins. And I'm the youngest out of all of them. And so what we did was, a few days after she had passed, I had put all her jewelry in different bags and made sure that everything was going to be divided up. And I invited all of my cousins to come over to her home, and we put numbers in like a little jar, and I put numbers on the bags. And I asked them to all select a number, and that was the bag of jewelry that they got from her. I ended up not getting the beautiful big squash blossom that she had on her wedding day. I was so bummed. I was like, I should have put that away. Every time I see my cousin, I'm like, oh. I would have definitely put that in here. But yeah, everything that I do is really because she was, I want to say she was the first generation cycle breaker in our family. She it's powerful to see a woman who was a homemaker all her life, took care of her parents and my grandfather's parents, and find a job later in her life after she raised 5 children, and then later on raised me and my brother, go to work every single morning, talk to us about school, help us with homework, make sure that there was always a warm meal at the end of the day for us to have, and homework was done, reading. She really pushed us on our reading. And when a situation came up for me at the age of 15 in my community, I was really ashamed, and she really talked to me about it's not your fault, and she truly believed me, and that's what probably made me the strong woman that I am today. And I continue to wear her jewelry because she was strong.
Yes. Thank you. So this next question is for Caren and Mary, and then Mary. Could you speak to how being a practitioner, how that has helped shape the work that you do today?
Being a practitioner?
Making jewelry.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I started making jewelry like in the early 90s. And, you know, every job that I've held has, you know, I've always put my own Pueblo first, you know, not necessarily a particular Pueblo, but, you know, my Pueblo people. And so I've always worked like with Native organizations, you know, and it was always to bring my people up to the next level of being strong, whether it's, you know, finding jobs, whether it's, you know, even today, we have a lot of programs where we provide food, we provide emergency financial assistance. So it's trying to help people get back on their own feet. And I think, you know, that Native people have always been my love and concern, just because, you know, I'm Native, you know, and, you know, the way I grew up was in a community. You know, from when I was small up until an adult, I still live on the Pueblo also. And so there, everything is community oriented. You know, you have your health service, you have everything to take care of a person until they get old. And so I want that to also be part of my job, you know. So like when people, when anything happens, like natural disasters, you know, pandemics, people rely on nonprofits for guidance. And so that's kind of what I do, is like, we're the first people they come to. And so, yeah, it's been a great journey. You know, I no longer do jewelry anymore, but I have some really unique pieces that I did in the past. And yeah, so that's
about how you started out to support your,
yeah.
you were doing jewelry for a living?
Yeah, you know, at one point I did want to continue making jewelry, and you know, eventually it turned out to the point where I had to go back to work full time. You know, I thought jewelry would support my family, and I started going to other art shows, and eventually, yeah, I had to go back to work. But, you know, I often wonder what would have, you know, how it would have come about had I continued jewelry, because some of the items that I made, I don't see anything like that out there. Instead of doing like lapidary work on the top of the, like pieces, I did lapidary around the sides. And so, yeah, so that's basically how it is.
I think being a practitioner, a maker, an artist was ingrained in me, I think, really young from my mother. So she took us on the Powwow Trail, was a vendor, did beadwork, had us carving soapstone smudge bowls in a barn, silk screening T-shirts. Like, we did all that stuff, and she would take all those kids on the Powwow Trail, and she would make us dance outfits, and we would dance. And then it got to the point where she said, okay, I'm not making you any more outfits. You got to start making your own. So we did, and we started learning and making those things for ourselves. And then I kind of carried that with me and enjoyed the sense of belonging that I felt as I was making things, mostly working in beadwork, and always had a desire to learn other types of mediums that were specific to Anishinaabe, but didn't really have access to learning any of that during that time and growing up. But I think what my mom created for us was kind of like this pathway for us to continue learning. So when I, go to IAIA and I see, peers creating all of these beautiful things, I of course went into museum studies, but always found a way to kind of bring in the act of making and art making into whatever it was that we were kind of looking at or talking about. And then I go into PhD studies, and I'm really trying to focus in on learning about, practices of Anishinaabe art making and what happened to that. Where did it go? Where did those things that our ancestors make go? And why weren't they in our community? So I was really able to do a deep dive in finding where those things were. And I still, you can only accomplish so much in a few years' time when you're doing research, but found some things and hope to, really kind of re-engage community in seeing those ancestral belongings, get the Anishinaabe, the old ones. So I find that, making and art making is really a good anchor for when we're talking about history. Beadwork as, centering intergenerational knowledge production, learning about the history of trade, learning about the history of settler colonialism, but also like the creativity, the ingenuity, the innovation of Indigenous people, Indigenous women who are taking these materials and transforming them into beautiful things for their families, which it sounds like we continue to do today. Miigwech.
Thank you. This next question is for Patsy and Danielle. Each of you shared jewelry that you acquired to help support the artists and the arts. Could you each share with us your thoughts and or philosophy about your personal drive to support Indigenous art and artists, specifically what led you into the field of the arts?
Thanks, Patsy. What really started was that first position at NMAI, and I was really lucky to be there in New York when the museum was founded. I started at NMAI in 1992. I know, I was only about 4 years old when I started, but it was the first time I had seen a museum say, this needs to come from the Native perspective. And that was so important as a young, emerging museum professional to hear that commitment to allowing us to tell our own stories. And so then fast forward all these many years to IAIA, and when I was director of advancement at IAIA, to see these young Native artists and how dedicated they are. They're coming away from their homes, they're coming away from their reservations. Thank you, Cathedral. And really wanting to support them, really wanting to give them that, good job. And if that was by buying their art, buying their pieces, introducing my children to buying art and supporting Native artists. My walls are chock full, but I can wear art all the time. So buying jewelry has really been especially easy way to create that connection. And it's also the encouragement to be able to remember who each of these pieces is by and tell people about where they can find Native jewelry. It just, for me, has been, just one stop after another, and having the opportunity to be here at IAIA was really just fantastic, because you really do connect with the students, and I'm hoping as director at MIAC that we can connect even more with students from IAIA through Mary's program, through the other programs that are available there. So I really look forward to it.
Thank you, Danielle. Yeah, I don't mean to get the violin out, but I was raised poor. I know what it's like to be poor. And a lot of artists are poor. They really are. I mean, even today, some people you think are successful, they're living hand to mouth. So I have always purchased from the Native artists, always. When I started at Atlatl, which was a service organization for Native arts and cultures in Phoenix in the 90s, I really got to know the artists. We were like one-on-one. And, you know, they don't sometimes have money to eat. And that was in the 90s, but it's still true today. So I just, you know, always seek out, if anybody's interested, the pants I'm wearing are by a Native artist, an IAIA student. Now, they really need the money, right? So I don't know, you know, they're so creative. I mean, Native artists are so creative. Don't give me diamonds, you know, give me turquoise or something, you know. But and I have a partner who's like that too. In fact, he will go out, and he has more money than I do. So so we'll go out, and he'll say, "Well, let's support that artist. Which one do you want to get?" And I'm like, "Okay." But seriously, they're so creative. I mean, you know, I can't even afford to get all of what I would want from Native artists, but. Yeah, that's just fundamental to me for who I am and have been for really my entire life. I put myself through school, and so I wasn't just raised poor. I was in my 20s, and 20s is when I went to school primarily, or 30s, early 30s, and I put myself through school, and I did without a lot. So I really know what it's like to do without.
Thank you. This next question is for Tiffany and Caren. Each of you work with Indigenous communities, and I was moved by your personal journeys that led you to doing the social and community support work that you do in your organizations. Could you briefly share your stories with us, starting with Tiffany?
Oh my gosh, okay. Okay, well, let's see. As I mentioned, my grandmother raised me, and I used to be in archery. So I used to go with my family and my cousins. We used to travel all over Colorado, Arizona, Utah, different Pueblos and Hickory. It used to be so nice. That was my childhood growing up with the bow and arrow, and I was really, really good at it. And I qualified for, I think, like something big like the Olympic State Games or something, and it was in Denver, Colorado. And my uncles wanted me to get more serious about practicing for this upcoming competition because it was only a select few from my group. My uncles used to run an archery club in Isleta, and they don't run it anymore, but it used to be really fun. And my uncle's, a family friend of my uncle had rose to the occasion to let us all know that he was gonna coach me or help me prepare. And that ended up being a nightmare for me. And I did report it, and I was terrified. And I received a whole lot of just awful comments from my community about what I reported about my sexual assault. And I felt very ashamed, but I felt empowered to continue to show up for my court hearing because I went federal, and he did serve some time. And I always knew I wanted to be a social worker. I wanted to give back to young girls who experience this at a high rate. Native women do experience sexual violence 2-3 2 in 3 Native women experience sexual violence in their lifetimes, and it's a high rate. 4 in 5 Indigenous women experience domestic violence in their lifetime. And so I knew growing up that violence existed. I seen it, I witnessed it, and I wanted to be a social worker. I put myself back in school when I left a very hard relationship. I was in my early 20s and I had 2 beautiful baby girls. And I started working a month after I gave birth. And that was something that was really hard, but us women, we sacrifice a whole lot to put food on the table for our children and to make sure that there's a roof over their head and bills are paid. And so I had to sacrifice and go to work after a month after I had my baby. And it was a social work job. And I really learned a lot from my mentors, from different trainings. I took that job very serious, and I never expected myself to grow in the position that I am today as an executive director, teaching and mentoring other young women to do this job. And I think it's empowering for women who've gone through these things and have probably almost lost their lives or just felt like almost giving up, that there's a new day and there's people that love you and care for you, and there's like hope. And to be able to give someone that opportunity and talk to them and advise them, or not necessarily like tell them what to do, because that's not what social workers do. We definitely try to give them options and make sure that they're using their own voice and being empowered to make decisions on their own, because at the end of the day, that's what we want for survivors, is to be able to be empowered and to make those decisions whenever they feel safe enough to do that. And so after that relationship, I put myself into school, grew up poor as well, didn't ever have anything. And I always had to go part-time as a part-time student because I always had to work a full-time job and raise 3 kids by myself. To this day, I'm still a single mom. And I live in my own 4-bedroom home that I got to build back in 2016, which I'm really proud of. And I just continued to pursue school. I've been going to school since 2018. I have not had a summer off because I go part-time. So I make sure that I, in any way that I can, like just trying to spend time with my kids. And social work for me, I really love this job. I love what I do at the Coalition to Stop Violence Against Native Women. I love to share my story because I in hopes that it empowers the next person hearing it, and especially our young ones, like my children. And I recently got to take a 6-week sabbatical. Today's like my official first day speaking back. I go back to work tomorrow. So it feels really nice that I get to do this with wonderful leaders as well. It's an honor, really, to be able to be up here with you all and hear your stories, because I think that all of you are amazing and you all have a story of your own. And I look up to all of you because it's amazing to hear what you've all have overcome too, and why you're sitting here today and being recognized. That's amazing. But that's my story, and the work that I do is really because of my own life experiences. I try not to look at it as a hard thing to do anymore. Like, it's not I know it was a hard life, and I'm still pretty young. But like, I try to look at the brighter side of things and make sure that our traditions survive in our communities, because what we see at the Coalition is that violence is not our tradition, and the answers to violence exist in our own ceremonies and our cultures, and that's what really brings us back to healing. And so I really love this work.
That's really inspiring. Thank you. You know, I attended Haskell Junior College, and from there, unfortunately, I didn't finish my studies because I had my firstborn at a very young age. So we kind of grew up together. So as a young parent, you know, I tried a lot of things. You know, I did jewelry, and, you know, one of the positions that I held for a long time was I worked for the Santa Fe Indian Market. And I was I moved my way up the line, you know, and eventually I became the programs director, to where I organized everything, you know, from like how the booth sits to food vendors, everything. So that, I was there for like almost 20 years, like 2 months short of 20 years. I was probably the longest employee ever for SVANW. So that kind of shaped, you know, my work, you know, helping Native people, helping, you know, our communities, you know, and producing events. So producing events was something that I loved. But, you know, once I left there, I thought, I'm never going to do this again. You know, it's a lot of work. But here I am. I organized Santa Fe's first ever powwow on the plaza. And, you know, I have a flyer if any of you want to take, so I know I'm going to plug it in, but it is Indigenous Peoples Day. And it's one of our largest events. It's Santa Fe, like I said, Santa Fe's first ever powwow on the plaza. And so, you know, as I mentioned before, culture is something that's like really embedded in me. My dad was a war captain at the Pueblo. So I grew up, you know, always being in the kiva, dancing, you know, you always feed people, always being a part of the community. And so when I became director of the Santa Fe Indigenous Center, that's what I still do. You know, I incorporate culture, like the powwow, into everything I do. And we don't charge any money. I just want to make sure that that connection is there for people who feel like they, you know, there's a whole group in Santa Fe where people like feel like they're, when they move away from their homelands, they kind of lose that connection. So I always wanted to make sure I created programs and events where they can tie into culture in one way or the other, you know, just to be a part of it, no judgment, you know, just being a Native person and enjoying what you do. So, you know, I also, we grew up, you know, the way I grew up was in a farming community. You know, my parents were farmers, they owned cattle, they owned horses, and so that was always a part of my life. So I also organize an event for the Indigenous Center, which is called Indigenous Earth Day. And so we give out like seeds that are indigenous to this area. We teach people how to grow, you know, and so that is part of the life that I know. And so when I first started with the Indigenous Center, this was like in 2016, I walked into an office with nothing. I mean, there was like a desk and a chair, and that was it. There was no history, no files, nothing. And so I remember sitting there thinking, what's the first thing I should do? And it was getting out the name, because nobody will fund you if they don't know what you do. And so I started feeding the community. You know, we created a health impact assessment. And so I knew what the needs of the Santa Fe Native people were. And so everything that I've done, everything you see at the center today is based on like that impact. Food, culture, loneliness and isolation, and events and programs. So yeah, it was a rough start, but you know, we are where we are today, and like I said, we're putting on Santa Fe's first ever powwow.
So we're coming close to the end. I want to leave a little bit of time for questions. So this is my last question, and this is to all of you. Many of you shared stories that deeply resonated with this project in a more distinct concept of how jewelry and objects of identity define who you are. For example, one statement made was that the jewelry they selected was Indigenous me. Another shared a story with the line I wrote down, she uses all parts of the buffalo. What do each of you advise to upcoming Indigenous women and others on how to pursue and persevere their own goals and journeys?
I can go first.
Yes.
Truly believe in yourself, never give up, support the next generation behind you. If you're a grandmother, an auntie, mama, as an auntie, a sister, like just support the next young woman and young man behind you. And I also want to just say, like, not just our young girls, but our young boys as well. Like, they need mentors too, to be able to see how to continuously show up for us and support us, because we cannot do that alone. We need to be able to be mentors to our young men and boys and give them the tools that they need in order for them to also be successful partners one day, fathers or uncles to nieces and nephews, and be those mentors for them. And so I want to put like a lot of emphasis on being those good mentors for our young generations, and giving them the opportunities, because I think, you know, like many of us mentioned, we grew up poor and we weren't given a whole lot of opportunities. I know I really wasn't. I had to really pursue the things that I wanted on my own. And that took a lot of believing in myself and my grandmother's words of like, go to school, because once you have a degree, no one can take that away from you. And school to her was really important. And so was our culture and our traditions and our language. I wouldn't be as involved as I am today if it wasn't for her, because she took me around to wherever we were needed for the family or the community. And I really did learn a lot from her on how to be a Pueblo woman. And seeing her, you know, show up in those spaces groomed with her jewelry, her favorite ring that she would wear. And I think that's what I continue to do today. I still walk around with earrings on. It doesn't matter how big or small. I think they're just beautiful, and they really truly represent, we are proud Native women, and that's what I definitely want to continue to teach my children. In fact, my daughter was looking for the bracelet that my grandma had gifted me, and I gave to her, and she was like, "Where's that bracelet?" And I said, "Well, it's in Santa Fe. We'll get it soon." But I love that. You know, I love that she can go to my jewelry box and start selecting whatever she feels is going to represent her that day. And that really makes me happy.
You know, I guess, especially hearing how inspiring Tiffany's been telling us her story. When Deb Haaland was sworn into Congress, she talked about leaving the ladder down for the next generation. And that for me resonated so much so. And at the time I was at IAIA, and you know, having those students around, having that atmosphere of learning and growing and creating, to me was just, that's how I have to live my life. I have to make sure that I am giving opportunities, whether it's curatorial voices, whether it's, you know, now in the position that I'm in, making sure that I'm connecting with the communities. I'm not Pueblo, I'm not Apache, I am not from here. I want to make sure that I am being representative of the communities that are from here. And I think that's one thing that we do at MIAC, is to really listen to those community leaders. We have an Indian advisory panel, and I'm going to call her out. Paula Mirabal is here today, and she is one of our Indian advisory panelists. It is so important to have that voice, to have it connected to who we are and what we display, and those opportunities for, if it's artists within communities that we don't know about, to hear about that and to be able to to bring them into the museum and give them those opportunities. So I think really my whole journey has been about how do I reconnect the stories of our people to a larger audience. And so that has always fueled me in whatever I do.
Mentorship. Mentorship to me is key. And it's what I've done my whole career. It's also, I've had mentors. I would not be where I am today if I did not have good mentors. And what I would say is be sure to make sure they have your best interest, because they don't always. My first mentor didn't. But yesterday I had lunch. I hosted a lunch here with Indigenous leaders across the country and key people here like Shyla Spicer from the Native Arts and Cultures Foundation, Candace Hopkins, and just a whole list of people. And we're calling it matriarts, so matriarchal arts mentors. And that's what we want to establish across the country, so that, let's say, when a young Native woman or old Native woman, doesn't really matter, goes somewhere, they'll have somebody to be in touch with. And so it was a really great gathering yesterday. It's kind of the kickoff for this. It's still a lot of work. I was involved with the International Women's Forum, and it's something similar that I want to replicate, and that is that part of that organization, which I resigned from, but part of that organization is it didn't matter if I went to New York, there was somebody I could call. And I just think we need that kind of thing, and we just need to really support one another. And this is kind of a cliche these days, but just be kind. I don't care if you're Native or not Native, and everybody needs some guidance to some degree.
Yeah, I love that, the mentorship aspect of it. And I've been trying to think of a bunch of different things, and I think about my own pathway to where I am today and how much support that took, and how much struggle was involved. Being a young single parent, I was 19 when I had my oldest son, started at IAIA when I was about 20, so he was only a year old, and I really had a hard time. I was never on time. I was always late, $1 short, used to sell beadwork to get money, food stamps weren't coming in on time. There was a lot of struggle that came with the territory, but overcame that, find ways to struggle, to get through it. So don't underestimate, young parents, single parents, mothers, fathers, they have a lot, they've worked really hard to get where they are. And they've dealt with a lot, even from that morning to get, to that meeting. So kindness really rings with me as well, and the importance of kindness, to be kind with your knowledge, be kind with your sharing, to be welcoming. And I struggled, but also had a lot of people that supported my journey, seeing things in myself that I didn't necessarily see myself, which became really important in my own growth. And then, I extend the ladder, open the door, invite others to the table, extend the table, right, to have them there. The Research Center becomes an important training ground for young professionals, bringing in students who are trying to also, find their way and including them. Inclusion becomes really big in that too. So, and along with that is providing the funding, the opportunity, understanding that they're coming from, students are coming from communities, something that I also struggled with, not being close to my First Nation community and family, which is a major support network for our young people and our young students. When they come away from those networks, they need those extra supports in being away. So, finding ways to in the moment to pivot and to be a support, and not all experience is going to be the same. And to tailor, I guess, is my approach in working with students at IAIA and in the community, and even within our own family. Me and my partner, Blue, we both went off and did our PhDs, and I really did a deep dive into history of my First Nation, and he really looked into the history of his, and we come back together pretty often, and we're like, do you know like how hard the government, early, colonial period, how hard they worked so that we could not be here today doing this work? And that's a source of strength and a motivator for the work that we do now, and the messages that we try to instill within our own children for whatever they want to do and work towards in their life. Miigwech.
Wow, ditto on everything you guys said. Culture is very important, because I've seen a lot of people that have come through this center. They're enrolled Pueblo members, but they've never lived on the Pueblo. They're here, they feel like they're by themselves, that their community is not here with them. So culture is something, and connecting to culture is very important. Even if you don't have it, find your community. If it's not there, create a community, And this isn't, just to get together and talk every now and then, but if it's not there, let us know at the Indigenous Center, because we have events and programs that try to serve all tribes. It's not just one tribe. But it's really important that we do support each other, especially in this time, when things are changing, funding is changing for Native organizations. And we've felt that pinch, and it is happening. We don't know how much is going to happen, but there's ways that we can collectively work together to hopefully support our communities in the future. So being supportive of one another is very important to me. And I have one funny story to tell. Speaking of Deb Helen, years ago, I remember when she was a young single parent, I was a young single parent. She was at that time selling salsa. And so we met at an art show in Albuquerque. She was selling salsa, I was selling jewelry. And she loved my rings. I made a collection of 5 special rings. And she came up and kind of sheepishly told me, you wouldn't trade that ring for salsa, would you? And I loved her salsa. Oh my God, it was the best I'd ever tasted. Because I know she would take the chili pods and roast them in the oven. And when you do that, it brings out the sweetness, And so, I remember getting 1 jar from her, and I tasted it, and I was like, oh my God. So I said, yes. So she is the person that owns the 5th ring in my collection. There's 4 rings there, and I kept the rest because I didn't want to sell them. They meant so much to me. But she was the person that owns the 5th ring and for cases of salsa. And then Tatiana asked me, so did you take it and share it? I said, no, they were my salsa. So I had salsa for years and years. But I remember it was a stack of salsas. And at that time, silver was a lot more affordable. So, I was like, yeah, sure. That's my story.
Thank you, Caren. Well, thank you, Patsy, Mary, Caren, Tiffany, and Danielle, for all the work that you do and for your leadership in these highly successful organizations. Let's give them a round of applause. So we have just barely a couple of minutes to take any questions or comments from the audience, if anybody. Yes? James, Blue, Nanaba, Blue.
Can any of you speak about the importance of coalition building in these times where DEI is under attack, and how we need to come together, and maybe share a story of where coalitions have helped you complete your mission?
I'm going to start. What I saw post-pandemic with institutions, we were all trying to get visitors. And I think one of the things that really came about just post-pandemic is this idea of collaboration. And I think it was, to have gone dark and then come back, you realize, we're in this together. Yes, we're still going to be asking the same donors, likely same donors for funding. But what can we do together, and how does that coalesce, and how does that actually bring us even more funding? And I think, having been in several institutions in Santa Fe, we have 43 cultural institutions in Santa Fe. That's, for a town this size, that's a lot. And so how can we do that? How can we work together to be able to bring about even more change? Because I think our voices together are stronger, louder, maybe even, in some ways, demanding. And that, I think, is really important. I think we need to look at how our coming together really does reinforce a lot of this. We're doing the same things. How can working together just bring that message even louder?
For the Santa Fe Indigenous Center, all the programs were basically based on, sharing ideas and partnerships. When I first started, there was a budget of $20,000, and that was to pay my salary and create programs. But I did it, and most of it was, like I said, partnering, to feed the community, to, somebody just donating their time to teach a class, and keep the center going. So from there, we built it up. Last year we put on like 47 programs and events, and with the part-time staff. And so it's been an incredible journey, but it is a scary time. This year we were affected through one grant, which is the Northern Rio Grande National Heritage Area. We usually put on an event called Indigenous Community Day at Regal Park. And they first said they were going to fund us, and then they said, no, we can't. And then they said, yeah, funding is available. And then it ended up with their funding being frozen. So, yeah, it is a scary time, but yeah, relying on each other's help is going to be really important for these months to come.
Oh.
Okay, I'll ask a question. It's more personal. It's kind of correlates with when you're on a plane and they say, when the oxygen mask falls, put yours on first and then help the person next to you. So I guess my question would be, is there anything that you want to say about how you engage in self-care so that you keep yourself together so you can help others?
Such a great question. The social workers love this question. Self-care, self-care, self-care. So important. It's real. And burnout and compassion fatigue is a real thing. And so is, depression. And we can definitely wear ourselves out if we are wearing many hats on top of providing resources and support to community and survivors. And so making sure that you are taking care of yourself, it's not selfishness at all. It's really just self-care and taking care of you first. And that's exactly what our professors used to tell us as students. You gotta, they use that metaphor a lot, the airplane one, where you're putting on your mask first before you put on the others. Because if you're not available to take care of yourself, you don't have the strength to take care of the next person beside you. And so I often think about that with my children, because as a single mom, yes, you can get frustrated very, very fast. And so the ways that I take care of myself is I do therapy. I have a great therapist. She's from the Laguna community, and so she really gets it when it comes to talking about all the things that I'm going through, my community, family stuff, or if I'm just overwhelmed with work. Her being a social worker herself, she really gets it. And I really do rely, just on meeting with her and getting those things out. Taking a 6-week sabbatical was really nice. I really do, encourage directors here to have that in your policies for your staff. We do wellness stipends at work. Where we give our staff, I believe it's $2,000 a year. And we don't ask questions on what they're using it for, but they can use it on whatever they need. If it's bills, if it's therapy, if it's an equipment that they need for the gym or something, that's their money, and it's a wellness stipend that they receive. We also give staff an hour a week of wellness time. And so we don't ask questions of where they're at. They just put it on their calendar that they're taking their wellness time. And I'm grateful that they do, because this work is pretty hard. Thank you.
I think I want to work for you. I totally agree with everything you just said. Unfortunately, I have a boss. But to the DEI question, I just want to say, keep doing the work. Just keep doing the work. I said on AAM, the American Alliance of Museums Board of Directors, and that's what we are telling people. Maybe you can't be loud, but maybe you can be loud silently. Just keep doing the work. And, I'm older now, but when I was younger, somebody should have told me that. So I'm going to tell you young ladies, you have to find the time, really. I always thought that it was just urgent, and that was part of my, just who I was. But today I hike, I just do various things. I swim, and I just take care of myself. But I would say probably for 2 decades in my career, I sort of did maybe, but not anything like I do now. And when you get older, you'll see nothing was really urgent, right? Unless you're caring for somebody or, there's some emergency, nothing's really urgent. And I think back about my Atlatl days, there was a big program, and I didn't go to the program, but I stayed in the office and worked. Now, what the hell? I didn't really, at the time, I don't even remember what I was working on, but I remember the program. So, now I'm just like, if there's a program that comes up and I'm busy, I'll get the work done. So that's what I really encourage you young people to do.
This last year, working with the Research Center, it's been a lot of listening and learning, but also building external relationships and internal relationships between our IAIA community and off-campus partners and things like that, and building pathways for us to do that work. So a lot of our work has been kind of raising awareness about the Research Center and the programs that we offer, and trying something new. And I think that, Tatiana was very much a part of that, having Ragnapalooza, kind of celebrating, us and the work that's taking place around us, and raising awareness. So we've tried a lot of new things to build relationships, and that's kind of what we're doing now, especially with our artists in residence program. Housing becomes such a barrier living in Santa Fe, so we're trying to find a workaround around that to bring more artists to come visit us. And then I think for self-care, I think about family and how that rejuvenates me. And then, I wasn't really a big gamer until my lovely 7-year-old Minecraft expert taught me and my husband Blue how to play Minecraft, so we play that together. When you were 7, right? Yeah, you taught us. So we're Minecrafters.
Well, thank you, everyone. If you haven't seen it, the show... Oh, one more question. Okay.
It's not a question. It's just a comment.
Okay, good.
Thank you, guys. It's definitely been great being back here at Indian Market. I didn't actually hear about the panel until early this morning when I got a text message about it, so I'm really glad that I came. But just to hear what is happening in your positions as directors is definitely brings me a sense of inspiration. I currently became the Dean of the School of Arts and Humanities at Dene College back in June. So any guidance that I can find right now definitely helpful. And listening to each one of you has given me a sense of direction. It also gives me a sense of hope, especially what you just mentioned, Patsy, about doing the work quietly, because I think that's something that a lot of people are really afraid of at the moment. And I know we're not supposed to use that word or those words, but in Indian country, that's not who we are. That's not what we do. We're inclusive of everything. And that's the one thing I think that we need to remember is, there are people out there who are already setting the example for us. So thank you, ladies. It was a pleasure listening to you guys this morning. Thank you.
So if you haven't seen the exhibition, it's on the second floor. There's an elevator or a stairwell that'll take you up there. It's on the north side of the building. And thank you for being here. Appreciate it. Caren, let me have you fill that out. And I get to get one too.
Oh, you didn't submit this back?
I didn't see it. Oh. But that's okay. I will turn it in tomorrow.